I'm here tonight to share a story about myself. I'm not a paid person from Valentus. I'm here because somebody reached out to help me, and in my case, save my life. If you're to ask my wife here tonight, I'm sure she'd be wondering if I was going to be standing here tonight, if you'd ask her by the middle of 2011. Let me digress. April 14th in 2010, I was helping a fellow superintendent fix his irrigation system. And we were working around on a sprinkler head, and somebody was hitting a drive, and I was about 30 yards away, and I took a line drive just above the temple with a golf ball. I came home and I told my wife what had happened and kind of fell asleep on the couch. And we woke up the next day and I continued to decline, so we went into the walk-in clinic, and the doctor asked me, he said, "Do you know what month it is?" I said, "Yeah, it's December." Meanwhile, it was April. "Do you know your daughter's name?" Pause. Tears come out. "Do you know when your birthday is?" Pause. Next thing I know, we're going to emergency to get a CT scan to see what's happening there. And much like many of you, it turned out I had a concussion. And many of you have probably heard the same diagnosis. It's going to take 4 to 6 weeks, and you should be back as good as normal. And over the next 4 to 6 weeks, my conditions continued to worsen. I'd get to the golf course and I would go out and mow a green, come back 15 minutes later, and only to know that I'd mowed the green because I'd seen my tire marks. I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember how to get home. I had anxiety issues and continued to decline even further. And before we know it, we're regular visits to the doctor and doing psychological evaluations for depression, suicidal thoughts, and basic cognitive skills were getting worse and worse. I was having trouble reading. I remember trying to play a dice game, and I actually couldn't add 6 dice up. And the doctor once again said, "Okay, it looks like this is a little bit worse." So they actually sent me to the brain injury clinic in Vic General. And I remember walking into Vic General with my wife, only to walk straight through out the exit door on the other side, because anxiety was so overbearing. At one time, I actually could not even be in my house with my wife and my 2 children. If they were speaking, I could hear them speak, but I couldn't understand what the conversation was. So I'd go into the living room and I could still hear them, but I couldn't understand, and then the anxiety kept getting higher and higher. Going to Thrifties, numerous times we walk into Thrifties for groceries only to walk in and I'd be paralyzed with fear only to turn around and come out. And I couldn't figure out what's going on. And I couldn't even speak to my wife to say, "This is what's happened." I just turn around and he's gone again. And we did this for months on end. So 3 months work in the brain injury clinic, I learned coping skills. Take deep breaths, go to your happy place, and a lot of talk therapy. And I still continued to struggle. So I worked with a specialist, a neuropsychologist after. And from there I learned that I lost the ability to filter out information. So as I stand here tonight, my brain would be trying to process noise, colors, textures, lights, everything, and my brain couldn't process that information. So I'd be like a 286 running Pentium 5 software, and I'd freeze. And I'd freeze so bad that I would get out, and I would just fight or flight type syndrome. And I'd been through the system and continued to go through anti-anxiety drugs, antidepressant, and everything. And I was hiding this from my wife for the longest time. My wife has MS, and stress and challenges can really induce the setback of her health as well. So I was trying to be the man and put up the strong face, but I was losing a battle inside greatly in front of my wife and in front of my children. You know, my 10-year-old, I remember her saying, I heard her in tears, and she just said, "I wish I could have my old dad back." You know, or she'd see me crying for no reason and say, "It's okay, Daddy, I know your brain hurts, you can cry." Kids say the darndest things. And so I said, "Okay, you guys want me to be honest?" And we're in the Petro-Canada filling up gas, and I said, "As natural as it is for you to tie your shoes on, if I had a lighter, I could have done this with the gasoline and probably light myself on fire." And those of you that know me, and there's some of you that know me for many, many years, I'm a happy guy. And it wasn't that I was sad, it was just a natural tendency, these suicidal thoughts, the depression, and so on. And a good friend of mine, Jeff Courtnall, had been fighting concussions for about 10 years and had ended his career. And he knew I was struggling greatly, and he just said, you need to go to this Valentus place. He said, Brian, with my money, he said, I've been all over North America. I've probably spent $100,000 in treatments and doctors and everything. And I tell my doctor about this, and much like many of you, you'll probably go back and talk to your GP, and most of them will know nothing about this. And unfortunately, it's only spreading by word of mouth. So we went to the Valentus Clinic and we signed up for the treatment. I was a little skeptical, didn't know anything about it. It just seemed, how could this work? And through nine treatments and assessment, there was definitely a change. Actually, by the time I hit Wednesday, I remember coming home and my wife said, there's something different about you. You can see it. You know, you're talking about a guy that couldn't actually stand in front of 2 or 3 people and have a conversation, or especially doing what I'm doing now, to coming home and getting engaged. And by the time we finished on Friday, we went and saw my sister. And without saying a word, she cried and she said, you're back. And I said, well, how can you tell? She said, you can see it in your eyes. You're back, you're engaged. Many of us that fight concussions, we withdraw, we stay outside of the room, sit in the back of the room, our eyes are down in a submissive position. We avoid people, we avoid conversation, lights, you name it. It had saved my life, and like I said, I'm here because somebody had reached out to me. And the media has been nice enough to pick up stories on concussions, on Valentus. And in my case, Jeff King and Czech News picked up the story, and they ran it from me being a brain-injured superintendent to winning Superintendent of the Year. Like literally, am I even going to be here, let alone to win a national award? And they won their national media award on that, because we hear about concussions every day. In hockey, in football, baseball. And now with us, with our kids, we're throwing our kids up into the rinks because we don't want to miss them in case they're going to turn pro one day. And it's the worst thing that we can do. And it's been since, I guess, middle of 2011. Including last night, I got a phone call, heard about your story, just out of coincidence, and I send them information, a couple articles that I wrote about my challenges, being brutally honest, because a lot of us, especially men, will hide it. We're okay. I wasn't. And because of that, people are reaching out. And they've gone through the system, they're tired of the drugs, they're tired of taking deep breaths and happy thoughts. To the point, like I said, I'm not on any drugs, I don't drink, I'm happy, as my kids say, you're back, Dad, your one-liners are still crappy, but you're back. And I'm a big believer, this is why it happened for a reason. Most of my friends, honestly, probably didn't think I'd be standing here today. They probably figured I would cash in. Because I know some people, unfortunately, that didn't take the next step, and they lost their lives to this. And you don't need to.